Hello. Hello. Sorry for the numerous technical difficulties that there were at the start there. Assuming this is now... Yeah, there we go. Okay. So what I would like everyone to do is if you could just all close your eyes for me. There's no video, it's only audio at the start. I just want you to experience this clip with me.
Hou je hoofd laag, hou je hoofd laag, kom op, hup, hou je hoofd laag. Piloot, Hans, ben je goed? Kom eruit, kom op, hup. Kom eruit, laat maar liggen, kom op. We zoeken zo uit, kom op. Je bent een koning, man. Je bent een koning. Je bent een fucking koning. Kom op.
Okay. If you understand Dutch, then you'll know what it means saying, but some of you won't know. Apologies for this being a video with the technical difficulties. It has to be a video rather than a presentation. But so this is the realities of a plane crash. My name is Liam Doman Goddard, and what I'm going to be doing today is just kind of sharing my experiences of when I was involved in a plane crash in the Netherlands of June last year. So, about me, I started jumping in 2011 when I was roped into it. I was at the University of York, as many people I think do start skydiving. Woo! Didn't really know what I was signing up for. I was kind of at Freshers' Fair, a little bit hungover, and Rich Cotton bullied me into going for a static line course. And then I went there for the next 3 weekends, didn't do any jumps, finally managed to make one jump, and then that was it. I was there pretty much every weekend for about the next year, much to the dismay of Noel with my constant questions. And I started packing some summers and kind of progressed as a fun jumper for a few years, and then took the plunge, and then got my tandem AFF category system parachute rigger ratings through Hibblestow with the help of Rob Spore, Noel, and Andy. And then very fortunate to, since then, work full-time in the sport, working all over the world in Australia and then most recently the Netherlands as well. And then my personal fun stat is I still yet to have a cutaway, but I have been in one plane crash, which I think is a stat that most people maybe can't share. Okay, so what I'm just going to do is kind of set the scene for a little bit about what happened to me specifically for the crash that I was in. So at the drop zone that I was at Skydive The Mag, it's happened on a Friday, which is our busiest AFF day. We normally run kind of anywhere between 8 to 16 AFF students for first courses on a Friday. And on that morning, it was the first load with full fuel in the plane, 17 skydivers and the pilot. Nothing unusual. We had a normal morning. The plane wasn't in the hangar when we arrived, but we just thought it'd be maybe refueled. And then we boarded, we taxied, and we took off as normal. And then we got to about 400 feet. The engine suddenly lost all its power. I mean, suddenly there was just straight, no warning, engine off, complete silence. Took us a couple of seconds to kind of realize what was going on, but it didn't take too long once we kind of saw the concentration in the pilot's face that this was something that was seriously happening. We were forced to make an emergency landing in a meadow which was just next to the highway. We ended up clipping a billboard next to the highway, which ended up spinning the aircraft out. Luckily, we only had one minor injury, which was someone that sprained their ankle, and then a couple of scrapes, sore backs, kind of as you would expect. The aircraft, though, was completely gone from that point. Okay, so what I have here is to show you a couple of videos of the actual crash itself. The first one is very short and a little bit hard to see. You kind of want to look up into the kind of the right-hand corner. This is dash cam footage of someone that was driving on the highway that managed to catch the plane coming in as it made its crash landing. Okay. It's a pretty good video. I'm sure they found that very interesting on their way to work that morning, seeing a plane crash next to them. But you can kind of see that a little bit through that we didn't have a straight approach as we came in for the landing. We were still banking as we made contact with the grass. And from that point, the pilot did a really, really, really good job of having to actually just use pretty much just all flight controls, is no brakes. The brakes aren't going to work in wet grass, and also with no engine means you have your main brake is also gone when you don't have an engine. He had to use the rudder control to kind of keep us straight from hitting the highway. He also had to jump us over a section of water and then managed to get us in safely there. The next video that I have to show you is filmed from one of the instructors on board, Martijn van Dam. Okay, and this starts from pretty much just as the wheels touch down on the grass, and then follows all the way through to a couple of minutes afterwards, kind of showing the initial emotions after the crash. I apologize for any Dutch swearing, and also for a little bit of the Dutch subtitles that are overlaid over this.
Kom op, riemen los. Goed gedaan, jongens. Kom op, riemen los. Rustig. 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 Hou je hoofd laag. Hou je hoofd laag. Hou je hoofd laag. Hou je hoofd laag. Kom op. Hup. Hou je hoofd laag. Piloot, Hans, ben je goed? Kom eruit. Kom eruit. Kom op. Hup. Kom eruit. Laat maar liggen. Kom op. We zoeken het zo uit. Kom op. Je bent een koning, man. Je bent een koning. Je bent een fucking koning. Kom op, jongens. Even weg. Stukje weg. Weg. Kom op. Die kant op. Kom op. Fuck. Gedaan, man.
Such a good job.
Dankjewel, man. Je bent een koning. Goed zo, buddy. Goed zo.
Thanks for saving our life. Help. Bedankt, piloot.
Luister even, jongens. Dit is een inherent gebeuren op het onze sport. Ten eerste, als een piloot. Held. Help, 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 help. Help, 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 help. Met een vogel.
Iets waar ik al mijn hele leven voor vrees is gebeurd, maar we hebben het allemaal goed gedaan. Kisten doet het niet meer. Wauw. Wauw.
Not our first rodeo, but
A long time I've been shaking like that, man.
you okay?
Ja.
Hey, careful low. Left one.
I really thought that was it, man.
Ja.
Malaka!
Ja, Malaka.
Gaat ie?
Malaka, mooiste Malaka. Ja, ja, gaat goed, gaat goed.
Good luck here now. Pilot did an awesome job. Good equipment.
Oh, now the software off the class feels nice, huh?
Well, we got
Okay, yeah, quite a powerful video. What I would like to kind of talk now, kind of leading on from that video, is my three main takeaways from the crash, and kind of what I would recommend to other people to kind of help increase your preparedness for it. And then I'm going to talk about a little bit kind of more about the hows and the whys of how it happened, and then also some of the after effects that we felt from it. Okay, so the first thing that, to talk about from the crash is restraints. Okay, they definitely really did help us in this situation. When you have an aircraft crash, like initially, as you can see from the video, it's not too bad. But the minute you start gaining impact, people move around all over the aircraft, and we had what you would describe it reasonably kind of mild in terms of the impact, although it did look quite bad. If you have a much higher impact or the plane is rolling, body's going to go everywhere. And restraints is what keep you connected as a single unit inside the aircraft so that you don't have body parts flying about all over the place. Right, and to ensure that you have restraints working, you need to make sure you have the correct number in the aircraft. Okay, we're very fortunate that the aircraft that we have there are incredibly well equipped. We have about 25 or 30 restraints, even for an aircraft that's only got 18 people in it. So you might find that, you know, if you have only the exact number for the number of people in the aircraft, maybe the positioning, you're going to find it hard to reach one. So it's always better to have more than you need. They also need to be the correct type. Okay, you even saw from that video that with quick release restraints, they still take a little bit of time when they're under tension to release. Now imagine if you are hanging upside down in your aircraft with a climbing carabiner attached to your harness. You're not getting that off. Okay, the only way you're going to release that is if you've got a hook knife. Okay, and if your plane is on fire, you're potentially then obstructing other people getting out or not going to be able to release yourself. So it's really important you go and have a look at your plane, look at the type of restraints that are on the aircraft. Are they quick release? Are they suitable in the event of an emergency? Yeah, everyday operation, a climbing carabiner ticks the little box, there's a restraint there. But in this situation here, it would have really delayed us getting out the aircraft if we couldn't release the restraints quickly. And you can't see it from the video, but where the wing cracked over Matine and where I was sitting at the back, it was pouring jet fuel into the airframe, okay, and down the outside. It was completely soaked. All of our equipment and clothes were soaked in jet fuel. And one of the reasons why the aircraft luckily didn't catch fire was, one, we were in a wet ditch, okay, surrounded by water and wet grass, but also the engine was off. There's no flame inside the turbine, okay. But the electric is still on, the battery is still running. There can still be sparks, and it doesn't take much for the aircraft to catch fire, okay. And then, again, you can have all of those things, but if you don't put the damn things on, okay, they're not going to do their jobs, okay? So be vigilant. If people don't have all of their restraints on, don't let the plane take off, okay? Surprisingly, even at this drop zone, throughout the rest of the summer, through all the jumps we did, daily, we were having to ask people, even some people that had been there on the day that this happened, to put their restraints on the aircraft. And we even had to kind of threaten someone that they would have to leave the airplane if they didn't put their restraint on, even though they were thinking, oh, I don't need it. And they argued that about a week after we had this crash, okay? So put your foot down, make sure that people are wearing their restraints. Okay. The next important takeaway from it is your procedure, okay? So you need to communicate what the procedure that you have at your center is going to be, okay? Now, it's either most likely going to be an exit, 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 or a brace, 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 okay? We get taught that on our ground schools, okay? And you learn it very thoroughly. But then how often after that do you think about it in terms of the type of jumping that you're doing there? Like for us, first time that I learned about brace, brace, brace was being a student, and exit, exit, exit was being a student, and then that's it until maybe you do like an instructor course where you then get taught to be the person giving the commands. Other than that, you're told that someone is going to tell you, most likely, what to do. That might not be the case. You might be the person that is telling people what they need to do, okay? So check with your other skydivers that you jump with regularly. Check with your drop zone, your chief instructor, your instructors. You know, make sure that you know the plan that you're going to have for exit, exit, exit at various different altitudes and the types of jumping that you're going to be doing. You know, it varies if you're an instructor, a fun jumper, if you're doing hop and pops, where you're sitting in the aircraft, and also brace, brace, brace. We're lucky, I think, in this situation that we had solo skydivers. Although we had level ones, they were on their first jump there, they almost as a kind of a blessing to them is they have no reference for anything. It's happening to them and it's horrible, but they're just doing what they're told. They don't have any other reference for it. But I definitely was thinking to myself where I was sat, right up by the pilot, had it been worse, and I'm sat there trying to get a tandem student out, okay, that's maybe not very mobile, like my plan and how you deal with that would have to adjust accordingly for that, okay? And then most important, you need to work as a team in any emergency situation, okay? As you can see in this photo, the first people that were out of the aircraft immediately turned around and assisted other people out to speed up the evacuation. as you leave. And one last note kind of on procedure, which is something which I don't think is followed so much in the UK, but it was a rule that I saw when I was in Australia, is how the door is operated in the event of a crash landing. Okay? When we were on the descent, after we had realised what was happening, everything was in place and in plan, and we had adopted our brace position and checked our restraints, I made the call for them to open the door of the aircraft. I kind of had in that moment a little memory pop into my brain of watching with Noel a Grand Caravan crash at Lodi a few years ago, which some of you may have seen the video for or not. And in that one, it was a similar thing, engine out on takeoff, and they crashed into a vineyard, and the plane actually ended up flipping over onto its top, okay? And the call then to open the door was only made as the plane was just about touching the ground. It wasn't opened, okay? That plane suffered extensive airframe damage. There was no chance of moving that roller door up, okay, once that plane was crashed. So having the door open for a suspected emergency landing, even if you think that it's going to be not too bad, is going to allow you to have that exit point here. That was the only exit we had from this aircraft. The nose of the plane was in a ditch and the cockpit doors didn't open at all, okay? So if our roller door was closed and the airframe had buckled, which was likely that it could have done if we had more speed or we had hit some other objects, we would have been stuck inside that plane until fire and rescue came, as having jet fuel pouring on top of us, which is not a pleasant situation to be in, okay? You might have seen also from the video that the door actually did come down a little bit in the impact, okay, which is one thing that was mandated in Australia is that all roller doors have to have clips, okay, attached to them, and anytime you open the door, you clip it. Keeps it open in the event of emergency. They actually had a tragic fatality in Australia many years ago where there was a plane crash and the door was unable to be opened, okay, and then everyone on board the plane ended up drowning as a result of it. And from that was where they had mandated this in. Now, it's not something which I would say, hey, everyone needs to, go and put clips on their doors, but it's something to think about, is that something for your center or your plane or where you jump as an emergency option? I would say it's good to have it there. It's like, is this an emergency landing? Do we need to have the door of the aircraft open? Yes, okay, we can put the clip on, and then it's going to stay there. It's going to stay open. You're going to have that exit from the aircraft. Okay, and by far the most important thing for having a good outcome from emergency landing is you need a really good pilot. Okay, we were lucky that the pilot we had that day, Hans, has been flying caravans for over 20 years and has been a glider pilot for about 42 years now, I think. Okay, one of the most experienced caravan pilots in the Netherlands and also one of the most experienced glider pilots in the Netherlands, okay? And we spoke to him afterwards, and he's also written a few articles about his experience. And he said when the incident happened, it was second nature for him. He knew exactly what he needed to do even before he had processed the engine was out. He said he has multiple times as flying gliders, you experience cable breaks and have engines on gliders, okay? So when we heard the engine power down, okay, the first thing all of us felt was an immediate pitch forward of the aircraft, nose down, airspeed, okay, which is the most important thing. That put us as instructors at immediate ease as, okay, the pilot knows exactly what he needs to do in this situation. He's got it. It's not for us to worry about him. We don't need to speak to him. We don't need to ask him. We all know what's going to happen. We just now need to sort ourselves out so that he has a calm environment to land the aircraft, okay? And that's exactly what he said. He said he felt it. He immediately pitched down, okay, noticed the engine was out. Is this fixable? No. He was at 350 feet. And he then just did everything that he needed to do, okay, set the aircraft up to trim for glide, okay. He had quite a challenging point, okay. He was facing on takeoff there towards the city of Apeldoorn, where Skydive The Mag is, okay, about one field's width away, okay. At the end of this, the highway that you can see there on the other side, there's just a city of 200,000 people. There was nowhere to land a plane there. So he was faced with the option of having to make an immediate bank and put us down in this field, okay? So he actually had to turn the plane to the right about 90 degrees and then make a 180 degree bank at 400 feet, engine out, max weight, Grand Caravan to land it in this field, okay? He managed to put it down, and then immediately after that, he was, okay, I've got a 4 meter dike in front of me, and the banks of that dike are about 2 meters high. Okay? In his own words, he saw it, he knew exactly what was going to happen. If he hits that, 18 people in the cockpit, and my best quote from him is, there's not enough room for 18 people in the cockpit of a Grand Caravan. As you can kind of imagine what would happen there. Okay? He pulled back as hard as he could on the yoke and managed to jump the plane, okay, over that water and then down onto the grass. Okay? And I really think that the only thing that really did us in was the McDonald's billboard sign, okay, which is always saying McDonald's is not good for you in any situation, okay. It was that collision with the McDonald's billboard sign that spun the plane, took the wheels off, and then ended us sliding into the ditch. If we hadn't hit that, we might have stood a chance. Maybe the wheels would have maybe come off, but we would have had a much gentler and maybe an okay landing with a usable airframe afterwards, okay. And that's just a testament to how well he flew the plane that day, okay. And that is by far one of the worst situations I think that you can have. And for him, afterwards, all the interviews that he had going through it, he kind of truly believes that from his experience and his knowledge, even though it was a stressful situation, it was below the stress level that he could manage, and therefore he could manage it and brought us home safely. Okay, so you can't, go to a drop zone and say, hey, I want pilots with, thousands of hours and, to be gliders and be ready for any situation, okay? But it's just worth noting is, you can ask them the question of, hey, have you thought, when you take off from our drop zone, what you would do, where you would land if you have an engine out, okay? They said to us afterwards, you were unlucky because you were pointing towards the city. What if you were pointing towards the other way, as there's more open fields? And Hans said, well, okay, yeah, there's more open fields, but then there's more trees, there's animals, there's livestock, there's more rivers, there's more kind of housing. There's, even in a very open area, still challenging places to land. And then imagine if you are at a drop zone that takes off inside or close to a city. That is very likely that you're going to have very few outs. And it's something just to kind of mention. Have they thought of it? Most likely, they would have thought about it extensively, okay? But maybe not. Maybe that is a thing that is going to, help you a few years down the line. Okay. So the cause of what happened. So the takeoff and initial climb of the plane was completely normal, okay? There was no signs that anything was wrong. There was no warning lights. There was no errors. And normally if you have a sudden engine out, one of the initial kind of immediate thinking for the investigators and engineers is, okay, maybe it's a fuel supply issue, okay? On the initial testing, when it was then there that day with the Dutch Safety Board, there was nothing wrong with the fuel. There was no abnormalities. There was no obstruction in the fuel supply to the engine, okay? And there was no fuel contamination in the caravan, in the fuel pumps, anywhere, okay? So fuel was ruled out that day as not being an issue for the aircraft, okay? Well, prior to the flight that day, okay, the aircraft had been at maintenance in the morning, okay? Which is why we didn't have it in the hangar. Now, the maintenance that was done that morning was there was a temperature sensor which sits inside something called the propeller governor housing, which I won't go into huge details about because I don't understand it too much. Okay, it gets very, very technical. Okay, but that was showing issues the day before. It was showing error lights, not reading temperature correctly. Okay, and that was the maintenance that was done that morning. And the plane was run for about 15 minutes. Okay, it was taxied up and down. It was turned off. It was checked. It was restarted again. It was running fine. There were no error lights. And then that was when we were then went to board the aircraft. And the part that they replaced. Move through, I'll show you. Okay, so you can see that this is it removed from the engine. Normally, you wouldn't, when you do maintenance, you wouldn't be able to see this section of inside the engine. And what you're looking at here is a sensor which you can see highlighted by the, it's a magnetic sensor that picks up the two teeth, well, many teeth of the flywheel that runs past, and that senses how fast the shaft of the engine is turning, okay, and can give you speed readouts from that. Now, in the Super Caravan engines, you have one solid shaft that goes from the propeller all the way through. There's no gears. It's a single drive, okay. What they think happened is that during maintenance, how you're meant to fit this sensor is, through the manual says, is you insert it until it touches the flywheel, and then you take it back one half turn so that it's clear and it can move. And what the kind of initial safety report from the Dutch Aviation Authority found, and this was only came out a few weeks ago, was that, as you saw in the photo, if you get unlucky and you screw that monopole in and it's right in between the teeth, it can go in just a little bit further than it would do if it was touching one of the teeth directly. And in that case, 1/2 turn back isn't enough for it to fully clear that. And in the investigation, they found when they looked at that section of the engine, all of the teeth on the flywheel and the monopole were completely shredded, damaged. There was metal all in the thing. And although it's not conclusive yet, that is the preliminary finding, is that most likely all of that debris inside the engine, given the fact as well that it was a solid direct drive engine, caused unnecessarily a feather in the engine and then caused a flame out from that, okay? And interestingly, when they took the engine away on site, it started and ran for about 10 or 15 minutes with no warning lights after the crash. And even when it was sent to Denmark for testing, it still ran, as they could tell, perfectly fine. Until after a while, they got that same sense error light, which then took them to disassembling it. Is when they then started taking the engine fully apart, it was filled with metal shavings everywhere, destroyed metal, flywheels broken, everything like that. So it was a maintenance issue, but not due to incorrect maintenance. Okay, it was followed completely by the manufacturer's instructions. And there's no recommendation from the Dutch Safety Authority for any work that's done. All they will do is when they complete the things, they will hand over the findings to Honeywell that make the engines, and it's for them to see whether or not they would need to update anything. For me, I find it quite nice that there is a cause to it. For quite a while afterwards, all we would hear back was, oh, we've tested this, it's not that. We've tried this, we don't know what it is. So for a lot of us, we were thinking, okay, we're taking off every day after this in an exact same engine aircraft, and many skydivers around the world are in aircrafts which have these engines fitted. Are they fine? Is there something wrong? Is there something that could be looked at? So it is good to know that there is a possible cause, and that there also is something that, one, is very unlikely, almost kind of a bit of a fluke, and also something which can be rectified. If it is led to be, okay, that is definitely the cause, that is what happened, then it's something that can be fixed, okay, so that it can never happen again, which is the best outcome for any kind of aviation accident, is that it kind of finds out that error, and then, okay, we can plug that. Okay. Enough about all the technical stuff. Okay. So the after effects, okay. Initially, after we kind of had that kind of initial shock, that initial pouring of emotion that you saw in the video, everything calmed down a little bit. All the emergency services arrive, and then it, for me, and I think for a lot of other people, it kind of turns into a bit of a blur. You kind of just sat there, firefighters, ambulance service kind of walking past, saying the same thing to you. You're in shock, and you're just sat there like, yeah, I know, okay, I'm fine. You get a Mars bar and a bottle of water, and then they're like, okay, back to the drop zone, okay? And then it kind of becomes a little bit real. It's just, everyone comes back, and then you see the faces of the people that are at the drop zone that just watched your plane take off and crash, but with no radio calls, nothing like that, okay? And then whiskey was out, I think at about kind of 12:30 in the morning, which is very valid, okay? And then everyone generally is kind of in relatively good spirits, I think, thankfully, because there was no major injuries, okay? No one was, kind of the worst injury was someone had a kind of a very badly damaged ankle with some tendon damage, okay? But he was back after getting x-rayed at the drop zone that same day, and then the only other thing was the normal expected bruising, sore backs, and things like that. I went home and then spent the day with my wife eating chicken nuggets, wrapped in a blanket, watching Disney films. And then the next day, we took off again, okay? We all decided that we were going to get back on it straight away. We took off with pretty much exactly the same load. We had 2 different fun jumpers, and there was one AFF student who decided to not continue with his course. That was at the much, very valid demand of his wife and kids. But the other 3, bless them, they carried on with it, okay? And I boarded the plane, okay? Same engine, almost identical. Same AFF instructor that I was paired with, and the same student that I was with, Papine, okay? We took off, we did a very successful level 1, and we did a weekend of jumping, and Papine completed his level 7 on Sunday, okay? Which was quite a nice kind of end to the weekend. at that point, it was like, okay, this feels not too bad, okay? But for me and for a few other ones, we struggled with it, okay? And I felt guilty struggling with it, okay? Because I thought to myself, okay, no one's died, no one's got seriously injured. It seems silly to be, struggling with the trauma from this. But it doesn't necessarily matter how bad it is in that moment, when that engine out and you're kind of sat there, kind of silent, looking at the eyes of people, and you're thinking, okay, this is the last 30 seconds of my life. And everyone kind of thought the same. We were like, this is it. And I didn't really have any kind of like epiphany or anything like that. I just thought, this is going to suck. This is going to hurt. And then all I could think of is that my wife, Dawn, was going to be really, really annoyed that I died in a plane crash. And then it doesn't happen. And then you're faced there with kind of going through that immense stress of truly believing that is your last few seconds alive, and then it's not. And for me, I struggled a little bit with sleep. Wasn't too bad at work until about 2 weeks afterwards. Me and one of the colleagues that was on the crash, it was just us two taking tandems up. We got brought down for bad weather, okay, for a forced landing, and then snapped, okay. As we were on the landing pattern in about 500 feet banking in, it connected the memory for me. For me, when I was in that plane, I was on the floor by the pilot. I had no visuals of the grass, of the height or anything. I was just sat there with my eyes closed, listening and waiting. And then I had a visual, okay, and it linked it through to me. And we're there holding hands with each other, okay, and unfortunately not giving the customer service to our tandem students at that point, okay. Holding hands with our eyes closed, okay, both crying, okay, which is not a situation you want to be in, okay, as an instructor. And then I had to kind of face it. I wasn't okay, and I was struggling with the kind of the feelings and the stress from it. And then the next day, the drop zone manager kind of pulled me aside and was like, hey, we know you're not struggling. Because all I did when we landed was I got off the plane, handed my student over, was like, the weather's bad, you're going to have to go home, packed my stuff, got in the car, went home. Didn't speak to anyone, didn't do anything. And then from that point, I went and got some therapy, got some hypnotherapy to help deal with moving that trauma, which for some people, they can, kind of depending on who you are, how you work, your life experience, can maybe, and for a few of them, they were like, okay, they could deal with it, they experienced it, and they could put it back in that part of their mind where they have the memory, but they don't have that kind of raw emotional attachment. And that's what I needed help with. I needed to put the memory of the crash in my long-term memory, but not have the reminders of it kind of sat there in me. And now I don't feel guilty about feeling, those feelings about it, because whether it's a good thing that no one got hurt, but we still all had that kind of incredibly stressful moment together. And thankfully, we're all good. Okay, everyone apart from the one AFF student that was not allowed by his family to jump again. Okay, he's jumping. All the students finished their level 7s. Everyone is still a skydiver. I'm all looking forward to our barbecue on the 25th of June this year, where we can meet up, and paid for, thankfully, by the media who bought all the videos, which will be very nice. And then where we can share that experience. And I think it's quite a unique thing to have a group of 18 people where you have that incredibly stressful, traumatic event, and it binds you, whether or not we were friends, with, or we knew those kind of students beforehand or what. We are forever bound as that group that experienced that plane crash together. And that's everything. And then I'm around all day, so if you want to grab me and ask me anything more personal or anything like that, feel free. But thank you very much for listening.